Hi, I'm Dr. Shwini Bapat, a caregiver coach with a PineMD and a palliative care physician. Today, you're joining us on Coffee with the Coaches. This is where we share tips, strategies to help you care for your aging parents, in laws, or loved one, while also making sure you take care of yourself. And look, if you aren't already on our weekly newsletter, make sure to join. This is where we share tips and strategies to help you take care of your loved ones while also making sure you get the support that you need. Today, we have with us Star Bradbury, a former Florida license administrator and executive director for both an assisted living and memory care facility. She has over 18 years working with a nationally recognized life care community under her belt, and she now uses that expertise to help families navigate the confusing and complex senior living options. She is also the founder of Senior Living Strategies and the author of Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, which is a book I have right here. I have bookmarked it, and this is actually how I got in touch with Star. So before we get started, make sure to smash that subscribe button so you'll always be in the know when we come out with a new and helpful video. So Star, thank you so much for being here.
Well, what a lovely introduction. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I love talking to someone who's as passionate as I am about trying to help all those caregivers that you have as listeners.
Well, I'm so glad you're here because I think you're actually exactly the person we need to help us figure out what are all the senior living options? What do they mean? Like, just so we're all on the same page, what is the difference between, let's say, a retirement community, an assisted living facility, a SNF, a nursing home, a memory care unit? Do you see all these words and jargon that's coming up? And people get
Yes,
so confused. I get so confused, honestly, between the differences. So I would love for you, with your experience, to just kind of break it down for us
I,
and let
I would
us know
be
what
happy
are
to.
these terms and what do they mean?
Well, we could spend the next hour talking about this, and I've actually done seminars on this very topic and handed out a list of abbreviations that people in the industry throw around, which drive me a little crazy because why would their person they're speaking to know what a SNF is or an ALF or
Right.
even a CCRC and so I try to be careful to use the full terms and
Yeah.
help people understand what they're trying to educate themselves on. Well, the first thing that I want to say is it's so important to really educate yourself on what the options are rather than lumping all these senior living facilities into one category. That couldn't be farther from the truth. And yes, it takes time and dedication to really parse out the differences, even between assisted living and memory care, much less a retirement community and a life care community. They're vastly different and they're designed to meet the needs of vastly different people. And so as a caregiver, I think what your obligation is just to yourself, and who doesn't want to educate themselves? That's my approach, and learn more options that they don't even know exist. I like to say you don't know what you don't know. And I was certainly guilty of that in my younger years and trying to make decisions for my own parents. So let's kind of jump in here. So an ALF stands for Assisted Living Facility. Sometimes people say, and when they're writing MC for memory care. Let's talk about those two things to begin with. As you said, I was a administrator of both an assisted living facility and a memory care facility. And so I kind of start by telling people assisted living facilities only came into being about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when they started to be licensed as assisted living and memory care. They're kind of what people used to think of when they would say things like this. If mom and dad just had a little more help, they would probably be okay. So, what does a little more help look like? And I would say the way an assisted living facility or a memory care, and by the way, well, let me stay on track. What do they look at? They look at what here's another acronym, ADLs, activities of daily living. So as you're thinking of your parents, or as a facility is wondering, can I accept this person? It's a process into my facility. What kind of help do they need? So there's almost every state. In Florida, it's an 1823 form. The other states have different numbers to their forms. But of course, there has to be an evaluation to see if the facility can actually meet that person's needs. What if their needs are so great that they actually need a SNF, a skilled nursing facility? So activities of daily living are your basic things. Just think about what you do when you wake up. You wake up and what do? You brush your teeth, and then you shower in some order, right? You're dressing. So ADLs is this person need assistance or independent in those basic things? Dressing, bathing, personal hygiene, toileting, if they're able to actually feed themselves. So that's, can they actually use utensils and feed themselves? Cooking, and that's under a different heading called instrumental activities of daily living, IADLs. So as you look at your loved one, you might start just taking notes. I see that mom is needing a little more help. What kind of help? Well, reminders. Maybe it's cognitive impairment. Maybe it's reminders about personal hygiene. Like, Mom, when was the last time you took a shower? Or today's your shower day. And maybe they just need a reminder. They don't need actual assistance, but maybe they do. Maybe their mobility or balance is an issue, and they need standby assistance for safety if they're showering or bathing. Or maybe they actually do need actual help brushing their teeth, or actual help being able to get their own nutrition because they need to either be fed. Now that's pretty extreme. And if somebody actually needed that level of help, they probably wouldn't be appropriate for assisted living. And so let's go back to instrumental activities of daily living, because one of the key reasons people go to assisted living, and it's a very good reason, is medication management, which is considered by the medical world an instrumental activity of daily living. And think about it, it's not a basic, not everybody's taking meds. It's not everybody takes medications. And you have to have the cognitive skill to know, it's 10 a.m., time for my 10 a.m. meds. It's my afternoon time, it's my bedtime. I'm going to have my pills either organized or in an organizational system, reminder system. So lots of people, the first reason they go to assisted living is because they do need help managing their medications. And in an assisted living facility, everything I mentioned, you can get assistance with: bathing, dressing, managing your medications, help to and from a dining room, somebody on staff 24/7, but yet you have your own apartment. Most assisted living facilities, and I think you probably know this, have their own apartments, and you furnish your own little apartment. Apartments vary tremendously in size. You could have a little studio, a 1-bedroom and den, the bigger the apartment, the higher the cost. The more assistance you need, the higher the cost. Now let's talk about memory care. Memory care is 99.9% under the assisted living umbrella, licensing wise. Memory care is not skilled nursing. It's really a higher level of assisted living. Now, why would that be? Because if you have a loved one in memory care, they are not what I call pleasantly confused. They have moderate to severe memory impairment for whatever reason. It doesn't have to just be Alzheimer's. You and I know that many people can have memory issues for lots and lots of reasons. Could be vascular dementia, it could be many things that contribute to their cognitive impairment. But usually, as I like to tell people, you can have someone who's a frail elderly person who's cognitively clear, but still could benefit from assisted living.
Yeah.
If they're not trying to shop and cook, and maybe they need a little standby help if they're showering or bathing, maybe they can take their own meds. But maybe you have someone who's happily confused, meaning they're not really, they just can't keep track. And think about it. It wouldn't be easy if you were taking 20 meds a day and it was really imperative you stay on a specific schedule, like with Parkinson's. It might be a relief to have somebody bringing you your meds, and so you stayed on your meds. Because if you're not on your medication schedule, you're in the hospital.
Right.
If you're not eating well, you're in the hospital. Dehydration, nutrition, all the most common reasons seniors end up in the hospital. And you have staff there 24/7. So if something goes awry or you have a fall, there is someone there to help you. So that's assisted living. That's memory care, higher level of assisted living. And often you'll find that memory care is a part of an assisted living facility. It's a wing, right? It's a special wing. What's one of the biggest differences between assisted living and memory care? Memory care is a secure wing meaning or secure neighborhood. The people, the residents that live there cannot just come and go. They're a wander risk. Their confusion is so high, they literally could wander away. And so if you're seeing anything like that in your loved one, you're already looking for memory care that's a secure neighborhood where you can't leave the building without being with staff or family for their own safety. And if you walk out of your door from your little apartment, you're almost always going to immediately see a staff person in this secure neighborhood. And that's not true in assisted living. You could be in a long haul and have to go find your staff person or call for that staff person. Memory care units are built usually where they open up to a central eating and common area. And there's always a staff person there, and they're trained ideally in memory care and dementia care and responding to those anxiety and that need. But still, almost always part of an assisted living building, or sometimes they're standalone memory care where I ran both, where the entire building was designed for memory care. The whole building wasn't secure, but a part of it was. So you just don't know what the model is for that.
I guess what that kind of, and we'll go into some of the other options, living options shortly, but then I guess I wonder, what is the difference between, like, when would you move into an assisted living home versus trying to get as many services in your own home? Because I know a lot of people, they want to stay at home. They want to stay in their house. They want to stay in their apartment. And assisted livings are not inexpensive. They're often pretty expensive. So is that something where you could try to get all of those services in the house, like in someone's house, without kind of moving into the separate facility? I'm thinking whether it's medication management, help with bathing once a day, feeding, help with helping someone eat. I mean, toileting can be, people go at different times of the day, but where does assisted living kick in versus, yeah.
And you're so close to actually answering your own question, and it's really an important question. Well, first of all, you are correct. Most people do want to stay in their own home, and it's called aging in place.
Right.
And I always tell people when I ask them, what is your plan to age successfully?
Right.
And they say, I'm just going to stay in my home.
Right.
And I usually say that is simply a statement. It is not a plan. So we can help you put a plan in place, or we can talk about it. And that's exactly what you do, is how strong is your plan to age in place? And the first question that I ask when people say, I want to stay in my home, is, great. How strong is your support system, your support team? What is your financial situation? Can you afford to continue to pay or begin to pay or start increasing people in your home, providing that help more and more and more? And so I would say that the dividing line is, at what point is this not going to work? When your need, your loved one or your own need, becomes so great that you're starting to realize that in order to get the help that you need and be safe, and maybe you've had some falls, maybe they've been at night, maybe you're realizing that you can't keep track of your medications, or someone is realizing that. It's one of the red flags, right?
Yeah.
Pills all over the place, a zillion post-it notes reminding you about everything. Those are all red flags. We can talk about that more. It's time to really think about that person's needs being met in a community environment. And there's some advantages. Well, first of all, you have staff there all the time. You're not relying on one person who
Mm.
may or may not show up, or an agency who can't supply the help that you need because your favorite person just quit
Yeah.
or left. The other thing is security and safety. And I hate to bring this up, but you have to vet your agencies and even vet the people that they're sending to you and make sure that you're not at risk. I mean, my own mom had lots and lots of things stolen, sadly, and identity theft. And we live in a world where you can't
Mm.
be too, you should be a little paranoid, and you need to be careful about vetting, communities, agencies. I have a long, long list in the book. But the financial part dictates for many what
Mm.
they can afford. If somebody has very deep pockets, well, they could stay at home, and they could stay at home forever, understanding that there may be a point in their future where they're paying for 24/7
Mm.
care. And I'm not sure about where you're located,
Yeah.
but I can tell you, and I'd like to pass this on to your listeners and watchers. Um, there's a wonderful website, and you may be familiar with it, and I talk about it in the book, and it's the Genworth, that's Genworth, Genworth, big, big insurance company, Genworth Cost of Care Survey. You can Google that, put in 2023, that's the last year, you want the most recent, 2023 Genworth Cost of Care Survey. And what's fantastic about this is that you can put in your zip code, and it will show you the cost for your area for home care, like a home care companion, a helper, home health care, that would be nursing or physical therapy, occupational therapy, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing for your zip code.
Mhm.
And if you want the shock of your life, see what it costs
For
in
sure. Yeah.
Alaska. That's the most expensive, like 20, and it's like 20,000 a month for skilled nursing in Alaska. So don't move to Alaska. I'm wondering
That's
if there's,
awesome. I will definitely include the link in the description below for that, because that is such a useful website. It gives you a real sense of the cost associated in your
yes.
particular area. So I think that's fantastic.
Scariest thing is that there's a cost calculator for the future. And I always warn people, if you're caring for your parents, but you're kind of wondering what it might cost you when you're that age, you can just move that little calculator up 2030, 2040. And I always tell people, you better be sitting down,
Yeah.
because the median cost of assisted living today is going to be in that $5,000 a month range. However, let me caution your podcast attendees that when you call assisted living facilities, that you should ask them, what financial model do you use for determining your monthly fees? Because
Mm.
there'll be one of two. If you call somebody, or you hear that, oh, so-and-so, that facility is good, but they're so expensive, it's almost always going to be that they have one fee that's inclusive of all the services they offer their residents. They don't break it out.
Mm.
The other model is a base level, which often is going to be about 5,000 a
Yeah.
month. And then they tier it up based on an assessment that determines your loved one's level of care. Now, in some respects, that's good, because let's say your mama only needs some help with dressing
Right.
and some help to and from the dining room. She doesn't need medication management, help with showering. And so they do an assessment, but you want to make sure that you understand that those needs will likely increase. That means that cost will likely increase, and that community will increase their fees somewhere between, oh gosh, 3 and 5% typically
Mm.
a year.
A year, that's a lot.
A year, yes. And you can ask them. So here's some good questions to ask if
Yeah.
you're vetting facilities. Any facility is one, what was your last cost increase?
Mm.
What do you anticipate? What's your average cost increase a year over the last 5 years? This is a good question for any kind of senior living.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, who is the healthcare administrator? How long have they been there?
Mm.
And that here's the most important question that I want to share with your people. And that is who owns you? Who
Mm.
owns this community? Does the same company own and manage the community? If you hear one company owns it, but a completely different company manages it, that is not my favorite model.
Oh,
Why
okay.
do I say that? Because there's big investment, real estate investment trusts that own huge swaths of assisted living
Yeah.
specifically. And then they hire another company to manage it. And the management company says things like this. Well, we can't replace all the carpets because that's just not in our budget. And we don't,
Mhm.
we're just managing.
Mm.
They don't have as much control and they don't have as much investment. They may be told, you've got to manage this building with X% profit.
Got it.
We want to get this building looking great on paper so we can turn around and sell it.
Right.
And so that I know that's a blanket statement, but generally speaking, I would say try to find a community that's owned and operated, owned and managed by the same company.
Okay. That's
And that
great.
would be true for skilled care as well.
Okay.
But that model is more frequently found in assisted living. I remember I told you we could talk a lot.
We could go on about this. There are so many pearls that you're dropping right here that I'm just making note of as well. So one of the other kind of senior living options that comes up a lot is definitely a SNF versus a nursing home. Like when most people think of senior living options, they really think of a nursing home. So if you could kind of break that down just briefly, what is the difference in that?
There is no difference between a skilled nursing home and a SNF or the term
Okay.
nursing. Um, the only difference that you might find is that some nursing homes are they used to be called LTECs, but
Mm.
they're almost for patients who aren't getting better. But the hospital, as we all know, isn't going to keep a patient that has such a severe diagnosis that they're not improving and there's nothing the hospital can do for them, but they're too sick to go home.
Right.
And they're also never going to be accepted by assisted living because their needs are too great. Remember what I said in the beginning, assisted living is for an elderly person who, if given the right support, can maintain their independence for longer. Skilled nursing is just this shy of a hospital now. If people
Okay.
in skilled nursing are not well, and
Mm.
they need a high level of nursing and medical attention and physicians on staff. By the way, you will never, ever find a physician on staff in assisted living.
Right.
They don't have to have that. They're not caring for patients that need that level of care, and it's too expensive, frankly.
Mm.
But I will say that you would ideally still have RNs or an RN that's overseeing the nursing staff and a nurse on every shift in assisted living.
Mm.
That's one of the things to look for a really good facility. But in skilled nursing, of course, you have medical directors,
Right.
physicians, and nurses, and they're a much higher level of care. There may be patients who are bedridden. That's not
Mm.
allowed in assisted living.
Right.
You might have wound care, absolutely not allowed in assisted
Okay.
living. So, and some skilled nursing facilities also have secure wings for
Right.
people who need that high level of medical attention, but also could have dementia and be wander risks. Or so they're the same. It's just a much more of a medical model
Okay.
than you'll ever find in assisted living.
Okay,
So
so the way I'm thinking of assisted living, it's really for the person who needs a little, like, just some extra support to
mhm,
try to live as independently as possible.
correct.
With this skilled nursing facility or a nursing home, you're really kind of short of a hospital in many ways. You need a lot of nursing care, you need a lot of medical attention, and you're just short of being needing to be in a hospital. Does that
Well, and
sound
yes, yes, and let's remember that every time, well, and this used to be far more typical than it is today. You have orthopedic surgery, you had a
right?
fall, you had a stroke, you had open heart surgery. Depending on your doctor and depending on the patient, you may or may not go to rehab. You're step down out of hospital into skilled nursing rehab. So almost every single skilled nursing facility I've ever been into has a big, if not 50%, rehab wing where they know people are coming in doing intensive physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and they plan to return home. The goal is for them to succeed in rehabilitating this patient back to independent living into their community, into their home. Now, so the people that live there long term are
Right.
almost always private pay because Medicare
Okay.
isn't going to pay for
Right.
long-term skilled nursing.
Right.
You're either paying out of pocket, and by the way, that's going to range between 8 to
Wow.
15,000 a month.
Wow.
In my town, which is I'm not in a huge town in
Yeah.
Florida, it's 14,000 a month for a
Wow.
private room with skilled nursing. And if
Wow.
you want a shared room, which is far more typical nationally, it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 10,000 a month.
Wow.
And Medicare is not paying for that. You either have long-term care insurance,
Mm.
a long-term care insurance or annuity, a private savings account. But
Right.
most
But
people, I always get shocked and depressed
mm,
when I'm in a consulting call. And someone says, well, Medicare pays for long-term care, doesn't it? Medicare pays for assisted living. The answer is no and no.
no, it doesn't. So that's super helpful. And then where does continuing care retirement home come in? What is that?
That is the longest chapter in my book. And the
Okay.
name of that chapter
Really
is,
great book. Really great chapters. By the way, just to say, Star goes into a lot more like a lot in depth in the book.
and lots of
There's
lists
like
and
an entire chapter on all of these, so definitely go check it out. But
thank you.
just wanted to ask.
Well, honestly, I just felt compelled to write this book as, first of all, I believe in paying it forward.
Mhm.
And second of all, I want readers to understand that they can educate themselves.
Yeah.
They can be prepared ahead of the crisis. I think I told you that in my book, I say that once your parents retire, they're in the go-go years.
Mhm.
But after the go-go years come the slow-go years. And after the slow-go years are the no-go years. And if they live long enough, God willing, that means that they may arrive at those no-go
Mhm.
years. And instead of pretending that's not going to happen, then why don't you read my book and
Mhm.
take notes and get educated and start the ball rolling? The first
Right.
section of my book is developing a plan. The very first chapter is get the ball rolling
Yeah.
and giving people uh, conversation starter tips.
Yeah.
How do you begin these conversations with your parents? And when should you
Right.
early before they retire?
Right.
Very soft questions. So, because we all know that it's so easy to procrastinate, and
Mhm.
everyone's so busy. We live in such a busy world. People are working and raising children and trying to the sandwich generation and concerned or already caring for aging
Yeah.
parents. And everyone does got what's immediately in front of them in that
Right.
crisis mode, and then they don't realize that by not being a little more prepared or taking the
Mhm.
time to call a family conference, that they're setting themselves up for even more crisis management
Yeah.
at
Absolutely.
their parents' age. But back to your question, I worked in a life care community. Actually, it was called here's another acronym. I bet nobody out there knows it. A UBRC. A U, have you ever heard that one?
No, I haven't.
It stands for University-Based Retirement Community.
Okay.
but it's built along the lines of a CCRC, continuing care retirement community.
Okay.
But now within the industry, that term is considered a little outdated, outmoded, and the term life care community is more frequently used to describe a
Okay.
community that offers independent living, but also offers all three levels of care should someone need it as they age, including assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. That's the reference to continuing care. And
Okay.
it's on site, on the campus you're living on the
Yeah.
community side, and you can go in and out of those levels of care as needed or permanently,
Okay.
meaning something happens, I need assisted living. Now something else happens, I need
Mhm.
skilled nursing, I can move over, and you haven't left your community of friends, or perhaps your spouse who's still in independent living.
Right.
So it's a tremendously flexible, ideally, way
Yeah.
to approach aging successfully. You basically already decided where you're going to get your care, and in essence, how you're going to pay for that care.
Okay.
The downside of a life care community is that they all 95% or more have an entry fee
Mm.
to live in that community. And people say, entry fee, do you buy your property? Do you buy your condo, your house?
Yeah.
No, no. What is that entry fee? Here's the quickest, fastest way of describing what this entry fee is. It is, think of it as a lump sum long-term care insurance payment. Instead
Okay.
of paying for long-term care insurance for years and years, monthly or annually, you are taking all of that money and paying it to this community with the promise
Mm.
that when you need assisted living, memory
Mhm.
care, skilled nursing, and most have rehab as well,
Mhm.
uh, that they will provide that to you for the rest of your life at a vastly discounted rate. So you're
Ah,
prepaying through that entry fee a
yeah.
portion of your future long-term care costs in a
Right.
flexible environment. People say, why would anybody pay? And when people say, well, how much is that entry fee? Vastly, vastly differs. It's
Mhm.
very complex. I would advise anybody considering that to get some expert advice in
Mm.
evaluating your 30-page contracts,
Right.
and evaluating the options. There's always options.
Okay.
Some have refund options where you pay more and you get part of that back to your estate. Because remember now, you don't own that property. So you
Right.
can't sell it,
You
right?
can. Mm.
So it is complex, but I'm a huge fan. I am of life care communities. Those entry fees could range from anywhere from, let's say, 300,
Mm.
350,000 to 600, 700,000 and more if you were buying a 95% refund plan.
Right. Right.
So I like that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I like that if you can afford it,
Mhm.
because it answers a lot of the boxes that people have questions like, where am I going to get care? And is it going to be
Right.
high quality care?
Right.
And what if I have to leave all my friends or my spouse?
Right.
Well, none of that happens if
Right.
you're in a good life care community where the person who needs care might get that care, and the spouse who's able to live independently stays in independent living in their apartment. They
Right.
can see each other without the burden of caring for each other. They can for as long as they can manage it.
Right.
So, but I would say, please, if that's a model that interests you, please read that. Go straight to my chapter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it worth the high cost?
Right.
Well, that's an individual decision. I
Mhm.
personally believe it is.
And so, for a family caregiver, so for let's say a son or daughter who's starting to realize that, mom or dad can no longer stay at home independently. They've tried to get a home health aide in the house to help with, food preparation. They've tried to get a companion that helps with bathing once a day, a little bit of helping them eat a little bit. And they're starting to realize that unless they're checking in on their parent every single day and making sure everything is teed up, that things could fall apart. Like, so if they are away for the weekend, things are definitely going to fall apart.
Right, right.
What would you say to them, like what should be their first steps when they start thinking about senior living options? And maybe one of those options may be assisted living, but how should they kind of approach that when they realize, I think we need more help than what's being provided, and I cannot be the one that's like the stopgap.
Right. And that happens so often.
Yeah,
And I would like to encourage those listening to anticipate that, to
yeah,
anticipate that's a natural cycle of care,
yeah,
meaning at first you're able to meet your parents' needs, then
yeah,
you hire, and let me just throw in that hiring home care, in my area, home care, a home companion,
yeah,
a companion who comes in and makes a meal. I did this for my stepfather, makes a meal and helps clean up the house and maybe changes linens and does a wash and um, fixes a sandwich and maybe takes your loved one grocery shopping or maybe even to the doctor and they're a home companion, they're company, they're and that's 25 to $30 an hour in my area. You can go to the Genworth
yeah, that's
survey, right, and
nice.
look what it is in your area. And again, if maybe you're thinking about moving your parent closer to
Mhm.
you and or another sibling,
Yeah,
look and see what the difference of cost of care is in one state or another. Look and see how robust the Medicaid program might be in
mm,
one state versus another. And I'm going to back up and just say, if you have limited finances and you know that you're going through your resources fairly quickly, your parents' resources
mhm,
fairly quickly, paying for home care, do not wait. Go see a certified Medicaid planner or an elder law attorney and get their professional opinion about the Medicaid qualifications in your state and how far in advance, many times it's years and years,
mm,
set things up legally and correctly before even applying to Medicaid. Because
mhm,
they could deny you, and then once in many states have both a look back period where they say, well, what have you done for the last 5 years? So I know people who've given their money away to their kids to
yeah,
intentionally impoverish themselves. Big mistake. They look at that. So we have to sell the house and hide the money. No, 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 no.
mm,
So there's people are so ill-informed and make so many assumptions. In many states, you can keep the house, especially if there's two people and one of the spouses is staying in that house. You can set aside money legally to maintain the spouse that's independent while providing for the spouse that needs care. Don't wait.
mm,
Take educate yourself on the options of what you can do to be able to sustain yourself financially and still meet your spouse's needs or your mom or your dad's needs
yeah,
as they age and may likely progress to needing skilled nursing out of the assisted living
right,
allowable residence. So I just think that so many people make assumptions about whether, that Medicaid is only for impoverished people. That is not
mm,
true. That's not true. And you want to make informed decisions. And though sometimes, as I like to say, long-term planning is not thinking about your future, it's understanding the consequences of making your decisions today,
mm,
your future older self.
right,
So if you're counseling your parents and you ask them, how are you going to pay for long-term care? By the way, that's one of my 5 pillars of aging successfully I talk about in the book, is how are you going to pay for long-term care? And the answer is, I don't know, or I'm never leaving my house,
mhm,
or that will never happen to me, or I'll just shoot myself. I mean, these are all things I've
right,
heard. And I just
right,
want to, yeah, okay, that's not a practical approach. It's not a realistic approach. That's why you have to start those conversations so early with your parents, long before they're retiring,
yeah.
so that they have a clearer understanding of what those needs are. And I've probably lost entirely the question you started out with. I think I went off on one of my tangents.
I guess I was trying to figure out, so for a caregiver, so a lot of
So,
pearls in there once again, but for a caregiver who is now realizing that their parent cannot live at home anymore and they themselves can no longer be the stopgap that they have been, what are kind of the steps that they can take in terms of finding the best option for their parent?
well, I really see this sort of in two parts, let's say.
Yeah.
One part are the day-to-day people that are coming in and helping.
Yeah.
I I tell caregivers that you have to have plan A and plan B. You're living in a constant backup plan mode, meaning that I don't have a problem with hiring more than one agency. But remember now, most of these agencies, and this is really critical, that are providing the home care, not home health care, home care companions, home health aides,
Yeah.
have a requirement, and you probably know this,
Yeah.
of a minimum of 3 hours a day
Mhm.
and a minimum of, if you're lucky, 3 to 4, sometimes it's 4 to 5 days a week, or they won't even take the job.
Mhm.
So there's a whole different way of looking at this where I like to have someone that you're privately hiring
Right.
through word of mouth, through personal knowledge of the person you're bringing into that home, through your church, through your synagogue, through your mosque, through your social organization, through some fraternity or sorority, some
Right.
word of mouth. That's part of your building your support team. So
Right.
now you're working with an agency, but you're also working with one or two private caregivers that may be more flexible with their hours,
Mhm.
may be more
Right.
flexible with what they agree to be paid. The people in the agencies, there's no flexibility.
Right.
It is what it is, and that's always going to go up. So,
Right.
and I know that people are saying, you know how hard those people are to find? Yes, but have you looked? How hard
Mhm.
have you looked? And
Yeah.
vetting. I have a whole list of questions to
Right.
vet them and how to vet them and the ups and downs of agency versus a personal
Right.
hire. And there's pluses and minuses to both. But in a perfect world, you have a combination and they're
Mhm.
providing that day to day.
Okay.
Now, the other thing I want to say is the second, I remember I said there's sort of two pots. So that's the
Yeah.
everyday person. And then who can replace you?
Mhm.
Person who kind of oversees
Yeah.
that level of care and coordination, either because you're not there, you live in another state, or you've got a job where you're already working 50 hours a week
Mhm.
and you can't take your attention off your family and your job, but you want to do right by your parents or your loved one. There's an agency called the Aging Life Care Association. Are you familiar with them?
I
ALCA.
am. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a member of ALCA.
Yeah.
But I'm at the, even with all my experience, I am not a certified geriatric care manager,
Right.
but the majority of the members
Mhm.
in this organization are. They're certified care managers, and they almost always come either from the medical side, meaning they're RNs or LPNs or have medical training, or the social work side. And some, of course, are have masters or they have both.
Yeah.
And if you go to the ALCA website, you can put in your zip code. It says find an expert,
Right.
and it will pop up. And you even can do like 20-mile radius or
Mhm.
50-mile radius. I would say do 25, 30-mile radius and see who is in your area. And do you need someone who's going to be the mediator in the family,
Mhm.
or someone who has those social skills to talk to very recalcitrant, stubborn parents who are, so you need somebody who's really, and it may be complex medical,
Right.
already have diabetes and now Parkinson's and you want somebody with a strong medical background. But anybody with that, and there's advanced professional levels. So you can
Right.
look at what level is that person. I focus on helping people make the plan to age successfully before a crisis.
Right.
If you're in crisis mode, I defer to one of my colleagues who's at this higher level, and they will come in and do an assessment, an initial assessment. Of course, they have to
Yeah.
do an assessment, and then they can oversee and
Mhm.
advise and come in and check on a weekend, or when maybe you live in New York, your mom's in
Right.
California, and you want someone who's going to go to the hospital with her
Right.
or advise, talk to the doctors because your mom's not going to remember what the doctor said.
Mm.
So, and ALCA is not the only organization. It's just the organization I'm a member of.
Yeah.
What you're looking for here is certified geriatric care manager or one
Mhm.
of those designations that gives them the experience to be in that role. They're not the ones coming in and assisting with bathing. They're the ones coming in and coordinating care. Now, if you're lucky enough to have siblings nearby and family members, set up a rotating schedule. That's
Right.
so easy to do now. Do a little spreadsheet And, Susie's got Monday and Wednesday, and John has, and then on the weekends where you're gone,
Right.
somebody's maybe coming in. I mean, I've seen this a lot recently, where sisters were taking turns spending the night with mom. She
Yeah.
was on hospice care, so they knew it was going to be a limited time. But when they knew somebody had to be there
Okay.
full time, because believe me, paying for 24/7 care is prohibitive.
Yeah. Definitely is.
And
And so,
again, when you said, when do you make that decision that
yeah.
staying at home isn't going to work? Well,
Mm.
unfortunately, you can't make that decision without looking at the financial picture, because let's say it's working now,
Yeah.
but you think that your parents' needs are going to increase, but they're still relatively healthy, and you're trying to plan,
Hmm.
for years out. Don't wait. I would say if they're lonely, if they're isolated,
Yeah.
if you see they're not driving anymore
Yeah.
and they're becoming withdrawn, someone who used to be outgoing and friendly,
Mm.
that's what community living is actually a plus.
Mm.
And if people could just understand that moving to a community might, I ran these communities. I saw people come back alive
Yeah.
because they had colleagues their age to talk to and reminisce with and activities to do, and they actually flourished.
Yeah.
So you asked me earlier,
Yeah.
what if someone has promised their mom,
Mm.
I'll never put you, or I'll never put dad. If somebody's on their deathbed, don't tell me you'll never put your father
Right.
into skilled nursing.
And people
I
say that
hope, I know, but I hope that, speaking to baby boomers out there like me, I hope that you as parents would never say that to a child. Never. That
a
is
lot.
a terrible burden to put on your child, to extract a
Mm.
promise
Yeah.
like that they may or may not be able to honor. And it puts them in a terrible guilt trip
Yeah.
that's simply unfair. So, and remember now, I've been in senior living 25 years. I saw people flourish in assisted living.
Mhm.
Most of the people that make those statements have not visited the options. They don't know. They, first of all, they just lump assisted living in with skilled nursing. And I can tell you that when I used to tour assisted living in the facility I worked in, which was lovely, people used to say, now this is independent living. These are lovely apartments.
Yeah.
No, this is assisted living.
Yeah.
The apartment we just saw was assisted living. So you don't know. Go look and see. If you
Mhm.
think that's in your future or your parents' future, go look at these facilities now. Put your names on wait lists. Even if there's a deposit, find out most of those deposits are 100% refundable. I can tell you this, really good life care communities often have 5-year waiting periods,
Mhm. Wow.
meaning you can't even get in if you want to. And I mean that. It's not a sales pitch. I don't even work in any of them anymore.
Mhm.
But people used to say, oh, you're just saying that.
Mm.
And I used to say, no, no, there's a long list of people waiting for that
Yeah.
apartment that you said you wanted.
Yeah. 5 years. Wow. And so, how do you, because this comes up with me a lot, there are a lot of family care. So, there are a lot of sons and daughters I work with where their parent,
Mhm.
or in some conversation they had, uh, they promised that I will never put mom in a nursing home. And of course, the mom's idea of a nursing home may not be the current, all the options that are available to you. But how do you kind of approach that? Because I find that that promise is so incredibly hard to keep, first of all, and oftentimes, yeah, it just sets people up for failure, honestly, because
Right.
most of the time, as you get older, you are going to need extra support. So how do you, I'm just curious, how do you handle that when people come at
What
you and say,
here's what I
yeah,
tell people. First of all, to the caregivers, never promise that you
mm,
can deliver a level of care that you know will break you financially and break you mentally and physically. 63% of caregivers
mm,
die or are diagnosed with a serious illness and before the person they're caring for, die
Mhm.
before the person they're caring for.
Mhm.
Well, given that statistic, I think that each person has to answer for themselves.
Mhm.
And if somebody asked me that promise,
Mhm.
no matter what the situation, I would say, Mom, I will do everything I can to provide the best care for Dad, for you,
Mhm.
for but I can't promise you that. I can't promise that will never happen
Mhm.
because you have to live with the promise, I feel.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so to promise something and then live with the truth of it at
Yeah.
your expense, the expense. I've seen marriages
Yeah.
break up. I've
Relationships
seen
for sure.
relationships. It's such a strain.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, is there some kind of creative solution
Mhm.
that you can anticipate? For example, can you build a small mother-in-law suite, or do you have a
Mhm.
house that has a mother-in-law suite so that your mom or dad can maintain their independence? Maybe it has a separate entrance. I've seen lots of families say, you know, we see their health is failing. Let's move them closer to us. Maybe even build a tiny house
Right.
which is on your property or right nearby. I've seen people
Mhm.
buy a house across the street. You know, their parents sold their house, used that money to buy a smaller house across the street so that if they did need that care, they're across the street
Mhm.
or down the block. Or you're moving closer to an adult child who's willing, able, and capable. We say that
Willing
again,
is that also, I think,
willing,
really important.
able
Yeah.
to, the job or their life allows them to,
Yeah.
capable. They're mentally and physically
Right.
capable. I've seen adult children with more disabilities than their 90-year-old mom.
Mhm.
So so no judgment, but be honest.
Yeah.
Who, who where can your mom or dad live or move to where
Mhm.
their support team is going to be the strongest? And if they know, they're not going to move, like in my case, to LA, Chicago, or Massachusetts, where my kids live.
Mhm.
I know that I'll be building my own support team
Right.
and looking ahead to what steps can I take. And of course, I'm a senior living
Right.
consultant.
This is
I
where
I'm
yeah.
not fooling myself. I know I'm in the go-go years, but
Yeah.
that is not going to last forever. So
Mhm.
I have plans in place.
Right.
So that, you be realistic, be
Yeah.
compassionate, be honest, try to develop a plan that's going to work. And when you're sitting down with your parents,
Mhm.
just say, and make it about yourself. Here's my big hint. Okay, I'm starting a conversation. Mom, Dad, and when people say, when do you think you should start having these conversations? When your parents are in their 60s
Mhm.
and younger if you see health issues on the
Mhm.
horizon. Mom and Dad, I'm watching my friends go through a very, very difficult time with their older parents. And they've been thrown into this crisis and they never had a conversation with their parents.
Mhm.
And I am pretty freaked out by what I'm seeing.
Right.
And I don't want that to happen to us.
Mm.
I don't want to be wondering, what are your wishes and never know.
Right.
So what are your plans? When you retire, are you going to stay in your house? Well,
Mm.
let's talk about, do you think your house, let's say it's 2 stories, all the bedrooms are upstairs, there's no bathrooms downstairs. Not a good house to age up in, right? So are you thinking about staying in this house? Because I'm a little concerned
Yeah.
if you ever had mobility issues, would this house work for you? But you're going to ask sort of open-ended questions. What are
Mhm.
your plans? Are you thinking about staying here? Are you going to move to Florida where the
Right.
hurricane's coming today?
And I think the idea is also when you open up these conversations is to really start with kind of soft, gentle
Yes.
questions. You don't want to go into the
What lifestyle do you want when you
yeah, exactly. Like,
retire?
what are you looking forward to as you retire? Just
Right,
to get a sense
right.
and
You don't
um
start with what are your end of life wishes and have you done a
right.
living
That
will
is
and who could help
definitely
your church?
not the place to go
You
for
want to
most
get there though.
people.
You do want to get
Yes,
there,
agreed. But it's
but
not the
remember
best
also,
question to start with.
no,
Yeah.
no, no. And boy, I mean, oh gosh, when I look back at what my own mistakes, like I brought things up too harshly with my father and stepmother who lived in New York City.
Mm.
And that's back when people used to write letters.
Oh, okay. So now you have all the letters.
Oh, and I was like, okay, that didn't go over very well. Not
Yeah.
talking to you for a while. I mean, I was sincere, but it didn't matter. I was just
Mm,
too rushed the issues too
yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, and I
But
think that's why it's so important to start early. I cannot like get this across enough, but starting early also gives you time so that you're not in a pressured crisis
right.
situation to have these hard conversations in a stressful situation. I think that's one of the worst times to have these
No,
conversations that
you don't
are
want
hard
it.
to
And
do.
COVID, oh my God, COVID taught us
Yeah,
that. When you
yeah,
were suddenly desperately, trying to have
mhm,
conversations with a
yeah,
loved one when nobody knew if someone's going to live
yeah,
or die with
yeah,
COVID. And so let's take some of those lessons about being prepared and educating yourself. I have such a long list of critical medical
yeah,
information, not just the living wills, a lot
yeah,
more than that.
yeah, a
You know,
lot
that
more
isn't
than
that
that.
hard to gather, but unless you ask for it or
Yeah,
know where to find it, you're not going to. Financial documents far more than wills and trusts and power
yeah.
of attorney. I mean, but there's a lot that, and you know what's funny, and you may tell me if you've seen this. I guess I always thought, and is it Ashwini?
Ashwini, yep,
Eshwin.
Ashwini,
Eshwini. Oh, how
Ashwini, yeah.
beautiful. Eshwini. I was trying various possibilities there. Eshwini. I always thought that the older somebody became, that the more willing they
Mm,
would be to have these kinds of
mm,
conversations. But the exact opposite is true.
yeah,
That the closer you are to looking at your final years or whatever they might be. And by the way, the fastest growing demographic is 90 to 100. So
mm.
all of you 30 and 40-year-olds need to be planning for that financially. Hint, hint. Okay. However, yeah, even though people know they're going to be growing older, they just don't want to look at it as they get older,
Mm,
which makes it even more important to bring these conversations up with your parents in their 60s. Don't wait
right,
until their 70s or 80s, because you can't plan for paying for long-term care when you're 80 and in need of that care.
right, right. So, Star,
So
you have dropped so many nuggets of wisdom. You are clearly such a great resource to help caregivers figure out the best plans that they can make with their parents or with their in-laws. Um, for folks who have not already picked this up, this is such a great book. It's literally like my go-to resource. Oh, you got to. My go-to resource for trying to figure out all these senior living options. And it really breaks it down in a way that's super accessible. So if you haven't gotten that book, I will include a link. Make sure you grab it. But Star, where can people reach out to you if I know you're based in Florida, but if they want to work with you, where can they go to learn more?
thank you for asking.
Yeah.
They can go to my website, which is simply www.star, S-T-A-R, Bradbury, BRADBURY.com. I have a list of the services that I supply, and you can actually book an appointment online through that. And then you'll immediately hear back from me that I confirm that, or if I have to move the time. But generally, again, my focus is not necessarily on crisis management.
Right.
Uh, Go to the ALCA website and look for a certified care manager if that's your case. But I do love to help people plan for aging successfully, kind of taking a look ahead and
Yeah.
asking a lot of questions and helping them process whether they're a solo ager or lucky to have a partner, a life partner or spouse. And also, I consider myself an expert in life care communities, and I do a lot of research for people on life care communities all over the country.
Okay.
And then if it gets serious, an analysis of the contract or contract options and what might work for that person, especially if they happen to have a long-term care insurance plan that they want to keep, that might change up their options with the community. And also I do summaries and explanations of long-term care insurance contracts
Yeah.
because they're gobbledygook to most
They
people.
are.
And I can break it down for the family or the person so they really clearly understand what's covered, what isn't, how long it might last as they're trying to look at their planning for how they're going to pay a long-term care. So
And do
uh,
you,
that's kind of my.
I know you're based out of Florida. Can folks outside of Florida still
Oh
reach out
yeah,
to
I
you?
talk to people
Okay.
from all over the country,
Okay.
and we work on the time changes.
Time difference. That's fine.
That
Wonderful. So that is starbradbury.com. If you want to head over there and ask your questions, work with her, consult with her, and help plan for your aging parents and aging in-laws, and hopefully bring them into the loop as well.
Yeah,
So
because I like to say, you're planning with. You're
yes,
planning with.
absolutely.
Hopefully, if you've waited,
Hopefully you're planning.
planning for, that means they're not able to
Yeah,
participate in.
yeah,
You waited a little long.
yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are in that position, unfortunately.
Well,
Um,
there's still help. There's still help.
yeah.
And one thing I want to say before we wrap this up is that many, many, many seniors have read this book for themselves,
Mhm.
extrapolated all the wisdom and education and lists of questions to ask for themselves.
Yeah.
They've also, it's great. I'll have people say, I'll take 5 books when I'm doing presentations, one for me and one for each of my 4 kids. So it's available on Amazon, really on any major book site. I think it's on Amazon. It's normally retail is like $19.95, but I think Amazon has it for $16.67 or something like that. And if you're Prime, then they ship it for free. So keep that in mind. And some people buy their books elsewhere. It's on any major site. And if you like to listen to your content, there's an Audible version. It has a
Awesome.
different cover. I don't know why. It's so funny that they picked a different cover, but it is in an Audible format, if you like to listen to your content. So
Be on the
please,
current
any of you
current.
that have read the book or read the book, and Ashwini, I'm asking you, please write a review. I know this is very public request. Please write a review on Amazon. It's so hard to get people to do reviews, and yours would mean a great deal to me.
I'd be happy to.
You're
I would
such good work.
definitely.
Such
Yeah.
good work.
I would be happy to. So, Star, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your wisdom after 18, 25 plus years of experience. You've kind of seen all the ways that things go wrong, so you can help make people plan ahead so that things go better for themselves and for their families. So, thank you so much. Thank you for
You're
your work.
welcome.
But also, I mean, you're really working with people who are stressed out, who are often really worried about the future. They're worried about their parents. They're worried about how they're going to support their parents. And just the wisdom that you have shared in this hour that we've spent together has been brilliant. And I know that people like you are going to make this experience for us caregivers so much, I would say, a lot smoother. And I think
That's my
you're also
goal.
helping to educate and empower us as well. So thank you so much for that.
You are very welcome. And I so appreciate what you're doing. And gosh, that's the whole reason I wrote the book.
Yeah.
Help people make informed decisions and feel good about their decisions.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And so with that, we wrap up another episode of Coffee with the Coaches, and I'll see you in the next video. And if you haven't already, make sure to grab your free copy of 10 powerful questions caregivers should be asking their medical team. You can snag your copy at www.epinemd.com/10 questions, print it out, then bring it to your loved one's next appointment.